Welcome. This is video 9 of the Assessing Risk of Significant Harm training course for child protection practitioners. In video 9, we will introduce Risk 2 and explain how this part of the course is structured. We'll introduce a case example that will be used to illustrate how Risk 2 is used in practice and explain how you will use your own case example from practice to complete the exercises. Introduction to Risk 2. Videos 10 to 18 will follow the structure of the Risk 2 risk assessment template. There is a separate video for most of the sections in Risk 2 and an exercise where you are asked to apply the structure of the assessment to your own case example. This will build your own risk assessments gradually. The exercises aim to embed the learning, associating it practically with your own practice. The purpose of this course is to assist you to learn and develop your capacity in this area. Please attempt to complete the exercises. As you become more familiar with using the ideas in practice, you should find the exercises becoming increasingly easier. Therefore, please persevere with the material and exercises, and also remember to complete the reflection activity during the course. You can pause the video in order to fill in your workbook. Risk 2 is structured logically. It starts by looking at harm, considers whether harm is likely in the future, and then whether the harm is significant. There are 10 main sections in the Risk 2 template. These are Section 1, understanding the capacity of the parents, carers. Section 2, understanding the needs of the child. Section 3, indicating the level of harm. These first 3 sections help you to identify harm. Then, in Section 4, we classify the harm. In Section 5, we predict the likelihood of future harm. And in Section 6, we summarize the risk. Section 7 is often seen as one of the more difficult sections where we consider whether the harm is significant. This concludes the assessment in Section 8 with decisions and the reason for decision. The following sections bring the assessment to a close and include in Section 9 follow-up actions and in Section 10 the team manager's comments. The first 3 sections assist in the identification of harm. Section 1 of the assessment focuses on understanding the capacity of the parents to meet the child's needs. It concludes with a professional opinion whether the parents or carers have the capacity to meet the child's needs and protect them from harm. This is scored on a 4-point scale. Section 2 of the assessment focuses on understanding the needs of the child. It concludes with a professional opinion to what degree the child's needs are being met. This is scored on a 4-point scale. Section 3 develops a professional opinion about the level of harm. Scores for Sections 1 and 2 are compared, and this relationship indicates a level of harm. The color coding in the indicating the level of harm matrix corresponds to a level of harm. These are either little indication of harm, some indication of harm, or a strong indication of harm. Section 4 uses the categories of the Children Act 1989 to classify the harm, as impairment and or ill treatment. Impairment is classified as physical, intellectual, emotional, social or behavioural development, or the impairment of physical or mental health. Ill treatment is categorised as sexual, physical, and non-physical abuse. Section 5 focuses on prediction of future harm. It considers the current pattern of harm, whether this has been increasing, decreasing, or continues at the same level. It then looks at likelihood of future harm, whether it is predicted to increase, decrease, or continue at the same level, recording the evidence behind the judgment. Section 6 summarises the risk as assessed at that point in the risk assessment. It brings the findings from Section 3, the indication of harm, and Section 5, the predicted future harm, together. For example, it would bring together a summary that there was an indication of harm, but that was likely to decrease. Or, in another example, a strong indication of harm, which was likely to increase. Section 7 is when we look at the assessed harm and the predicted future harm and ask ourselves whether this is significant now or likely to become more significant in the future. This section brings together evidence about the situation that may indicate that the harm is significant. Section 8 brings the risk assessment to a conclusion. It is in Section 8 that you make a decision whether significant harm is suspected or not. As part of recording the decision, Section 8 includes a reason for decision summary statement. As you progress through the following videos, you will see an example of the reason for decision summary for the case example. You will also develop the components of the reason for decision summary on your own case example. Section 9 identifies any follow-up actions that have been identified as a consequence of completing the risk assessment. This may include areas from the assessment where your information was insufficient. An example would be to inquire about other adults living at the address, or to use a specialist assessment tool to focus on a specific area. Section 10 is the last section in the risk assessment. It provides a record of the team manager's comments on the risk assessment. As part of this course, a case example is used to show how this would be recorded on the Risk 2 form. This is a generalised and stereotypical example of the type of situations where a risk assessment may be completed. Its purpose is to be illustrative. Please do not get too focused on the accuracy or realism of the case. Rhian Jones is 27 years of age. She's a single parent to her son Harry. He's aged 2 and lives with his mother in a first-floor housing association flat. Harry, her son, is mobile. Harry's father does not feature in his life. Rhian has a long history of substance misuse and an intravenous heroin user for over 5 years. During her pregnancy, she succeeded in reducing her heroin use, but relapsed towards the later stages of her pregnancy. Since Harry's birth, Rhian has been on methadone and supervised by the Substance Misuse Service. She has relapsed several times back to intravenous heroin use. Rhian has some support from her mother, and Harry attends a nursery and is cared by a childminder weekdays. Harry is a lively 2-year-old child. He is friendly and is ready to bond with other adults and children. He enjoys nursery and being at the childminder. He has lots of energy and is described as a happy child. He is curious and adventurous. Assessments of Harry at home have indicated that his day-to-day life lacked stimulation. Rhian was not witnessed engaging him or showing warmth. There were very few toys available, and Harry was placed in front of a television in his bedroom. During visits, Rhian has been disengaged, and suspicion that she has been under the influence of drugs at those times when she needed to be providing basic care and safety to Harry. She denies this and said that Harry preferred to sit alone in his bedroom. She tried to please workers by asking advice and claiming enthusiastically she would try another approach with him. Subsequent visits, little seems to have changed for Harry. Over the years, both nursery and childminder have been part of a support package provided to Rhian and Harry. Initially, they reported daily that he was late attending, hadn't always had his breakfast, or in clean clothes or nappies. As part of his support package, he is collected from home and has his breakfast from the childminder, who takes and collects him to and from the nursery. The concerns about Harry have included the presence of exposed, used needles in the home as he was becoming more mobile. Despite being issued with a needle disposal unit, Rhian was not consistently using this. Evidence of this has come in unannounced home visits where Rhian hasn't had time to clear or clean surfaces. When visits are announced, there have been no evidence of exposed used needles being within Harry's reach. Rhian over several years has been reported for having parties whilst Harry is in his bedroom. During police visits, several known drug users, some with a history of violence and criminal records, have been present. Rhian has been asked several times to ensure that Harry is always safe, and elsewhere if she decides to have a party in the flat or invite unknown individuals to the property. This pattern of incidents, police visits and safeguarding concerns have been repeated over several years. Rhian is well known to social services. She was originally referred during her pregnancy by the midwifery services as she was late booking. Health services were aware of her substance misuse problems and a pre-birth assessment was undertaken. Harry was subject to a pre-birth child protection case conference and Harry was registered on birth. Rhian complied with methadone treatment and cooperated well with agencies, and at the first review conference, Harry's name was removed from the child protection register. He continued to receive services as care and support. There has been recent new information from the Police and Substance Misuse Service. Police intelligence indicates that the property is regularly frequented by known drug users and dealers, including individuals involved in violent crime. A long-term surveillance operation is in place, but officers had some safeguarding concerns for Harry. Parties are reported, described as being an open house for drug users on weekends. The Substance Misuse Service has disclosed that Rhian has had a series of relapses over 12 months where she has reverted to intravenous heroin use. Over the last 3 months, she has relapsed twice. In preparation for supervision, you undertake a Risk 1 screening on all your cases. In light of the new information, you are not sure about Harry anymore. You ask yourself, is the threshold met? Do I have concerns about significant harm? You discuss the case with your supervisor in supervision and agree that you will undertake a Stage 2 risk assessment using the Risk 2 form. During the remainder of this course, you will see reference to this case example and how the information would be recorded in Risk 2. It provides you with an example and model for applying this to your own case in exercises that accompany the videos. Your case example. In video 1, we introduced the course outline and explained that you should have access to your own case material as part of this course. This allows you to apply the ideas to a real case. Using other people's case examples have their limitations, as you will always be seeking additional information in order to reach a judgment. With your own case, you will have all the context that is available at the time. Examples of suitable cases and case material include your assessments, child protection investigations that you have been part of, or reports you have prepared for case conferences. We would always encourage you to use your own case material. If not, try to obtain material from a colleague on a case that is as familiar as possible to you, something you've co-worked. Alternatively, you could ask a colleague for a case and case material to use. However, we would encourage you to avoid this if at all possible. Once you have worked through video 9 of the Assessing Risk of Significant Harm course, please progress to the next part, which is video 10. In video 10, we start looking at section 1 of the Risk 2 form, where we look at the capacity of the parents or carers to meet the child's needs and protect them from harm.